I finally finished the third part of my series on X.509 and TLS. This one covered client certificates and mutual TLS, aka mTLS. I touted the use of client certificates as the most secure way to authenticate users in addition to its value in zero trust architectures. After all that, I was told that Chrome is deprecating support for client certificates, and the public CAs have announced that they will stop issuing them. The era of client certificates for user authentication was ending no later than May 2026.
What?
Panicking, I searched the web, and the headlines looked grim. Client authentication certificates, client auth deprecation. Chrome to end support of SSL TLS cert-based client auth. Ending TLS client authentication certificate support in 2026. Root certificate changes for Google Chrome and mTLS deprecation. There were many more similar articles. It looked like the news was true. No! But then, I actually read the articles, and I realized a lot of people were egregiously misinterpreting the news. This isn't about client authentication. It's about something people understand even less than client authentication. Extended key usage. So here is X.509 key usage and what it has to do with the upcoming changes from the beginning.
Let's start at the very beginning.
Stop that! You're not going into a song while I'm here.
The X.509 standard, originally defined in 1988, contains a key usage field that describes the key's intended cryptographic operations. For entity certificates, this includes key encipherment and digital signature. Key encipherment indicates that the key pair linked to the certificate can be used to encrypt a symmetric key as part of a key exchange. Starting in TLS 1.2, the protocol uses an ephemeral key pair for that, so this flag is only needed for deprecated versions. The digital signature flag signifies that the key can be used to authenticate data signed by a private key. This remains a key, no pun intended, element of TLS, as it validates that the party presenting a certificate possesses the corresponding private key. But as public CAs began to do business in the late 1990s, they realized that these flags weren't sufficient. I've repeatedly described an X.509 certificate as being a certified association between an identity and a public key. But there's more to it than that, and the original key usage field was not enough. If you think about different forms of photo ID, you'll see the issue. You might have a badge at your office with a photo, but that isn't accepted for proving that you are licensed to drive. A driver's license has your photo, and it also shows that you're permitted to drive. But you might not be able to drive large freight trucks or even motorcycles. Those certifications might require different additional indications on your license. And whatever your license permits you to drive, it won't let you drive it across an international border. You need a passport for that. Imagine a system where all necessary IDs are obtained from one place. When applying, you would state the ID's intended use, for example, workplace access or driver's license or border crossing. This would determine the specific type and level of vetting required to confirm your identity. Finally, upon issuance, the ID itself would clearly indicate its permissible uses to anyone viewing it. This is the situation for certificate authorities, both public and private. The use of X.509 certificates in TLS makes it very secure, but the system needs to ensure that certificates are only used as intended. The key usage was a good start for this. For example, in addition to the digital signature usage, there's a non-repudiation usage, also called content commitment. From a technical standpoint, non-repudiation is the same as digital signature, but it's higher trust. If a digital signature is signed with non-repudiation, then the signer isn't supposed to be able to deny signing it. This requires a great deal more control over the issuance and handling of that digital certificate. The need for additional restrictions and permissions led to the introduction of the Extended Key Usage, EKU, in 1999. While the original key usage focuses on encryption usage, the EKU narrows the purpose of the certificate. The core set of EKUs is documented in RFC 5280, section 4.2.1.12. It's not really long, but it has some really useful endorsements such as code signing. But the really important ones, the stars of this video, are client auth and server auth. As the names suggest, certificates used to identify server endpoints should be marked with the server auth EKU, and certificates used to identify clients or client endpoints should be marked with client auth. RFC 5280 only defines this small set of EKUs, but there are provisions allowing for organizations to create and register their own. Microsoft has contributed the largest number of EKU definitions, many of which have been adopted industry-wide. Other companies such as Google have also defined EKUs. The governing rule is that if extended key usage is present, the TLS stack must adhere to the usage specified within the EKU. So, what does the TLS stack need to do when it encounters an EKU that it doesn't know anything about? The EKU extension is typically not marked as critical, allowing the stack to ignore any EKU flags it doesn't recognize. But the certificate must be rejected if the stack fails to find any EKU flags that it does understand. Furthermore, the certificate use case must be permitted by one or more of those flags. In today's networked world, an application server often reaches out to other servers in order to gather information. It makes logical sense to use the same certificate to identify the endpoint, whether it's acting as a server or as a client. After all, it's the same identity, just different ends of the connection. This is, in fact, such a sensible and reasonable position that for years public CAs issued entity certificates with both client auth and server auth EKUs. This is actually a problem because all of those certificates were vetted only for server authentication and had no vetting around their use for client ID. Bottom line, identifying a server endpoint and a client endpoint are different use cases that require different controls. The problem is much more significant when examining public CAs. These are certificate authorities where root certificates are pre-installed in trusted CA certificate bundles that accompany browsers, operating systems, and runtime environments like Java. While these CAs issue client certificates, the issuance process is very different from the server certificate process. When a system receives a certificate marked client auth from one of those trusted public CAs, it carries significant expectations associated with that endorsement. By setting client auth on their server certificates, these CAs allow a party to effectively bypass the standard rigorous vetting process designed for client authentication. Going back to the previous analogy, it's as if you got a workplace ID that incidentally claimed that it was also a driver's license. Certificate authorities, CAs, must adhere to technical standards as well as the CA/browser forum baseline requirements set by the Server Certificate Working Group. While none of these requirements explicitly forbid issuing a single certificate with both client auth and server auth extensions, doing so requires different kinds of vetting, so it doesn't make much sense in practice. So what is happening is that Google has put their rather large foot down and decided that starting in May 2026, Chrome will no longer accept a server certificate that also has client auth set. Furthermore, none of the root CAs that Google includes in the browser trust store may be used to sign certificates with client auth set, only server certificates. CAs refusing this restriction will not be trusted by Chrome. As a result, all of the public CAs have announced that they will no longer issue any certificates with client auth set. For the most part, it's already pointless for public CAs to sell client certificates for use with HTTPS. You can still make your own, and in my videos on client certificates, I've pointed out that running a private CA is the most practical option. Public CAs can and will still provide certificates for other personal usage, such as email security. And that's it. Client certificates aren't going anywhere. Chrome will still support client authentication. And unless you are relying on the server certificate you bought from a commercial CA being reusable as a client certificate, then nothing whatsoever will change for you.
Stay calm. It'll be okay.